in the highest document, or what they call the basic law, which is our constitution. So there is no equivocation about the entitlement of the Gambian diaspora to vote, to be registered and to vote. The law says that clearly. So we are not going to really belabor the point anymore because it is unequivocal. The other part is to look at what has been done so far by those institutions that are mandated not only to register Gambians living abroad, but also to ensure that following registration, they are then able to vote in presidential elections and also in National Assembly elections. We have also talked about the possibility and indeed the entitlement, because under the Constitution, it states that all Gambians, so every Gambian has a right to vote and be voted for, which means that we are also asking for representation at the National Assembly level, in that we are asking for 5 National Assembly members to be elected from the diaspora to sit in Parliament, to represent the interests and share the opinions of the diaspora at the highest lawmaking institution in the Gambia. How far have we come to ensure that these entitlements, which are guaranteed in the Constitution, are enjoyed by every Gambian, and that the diaspora is enfranchised alongside their own brothers and sisters on the ground to take part in elections. Now, I just want to give you a timeline, to draw a timeline of this, what we call diaspora engagement, over the period from 2017, after the defeat of the dictatorship that denied us the right to vote for the 2 decades prior to his demise or his fall from power and grace. That immediately after the 2016 election, which saw the defeat of Jammeh, the MSDG project, which is the Migration and Sustainable Development Project in the Gambia, took it upon itself to initiate a diaspora engagement strategy. A diaspora strategy that took into account all the entitlements, but also the contributions of the diaspora, not only to the fight against dictatorship, but also to the other forms of contribution that it makes. Remittances is perhaps the one best known, but the Gambian diaspora continues to make contributions to the Gambia in so many different ways. I would, of course, not premise our right to vote or to be registered to vote in elections based on how much we contribute and what we contribute, because that would not be a good enough justification. The justification for our claim and our demand is based purely and simply on the fact that we are citizens of the country and should enjoy the full measure of our citizenship without let or hindrance by anything, including the law, but also by the failure, action or inaction, omission or otherwise of any office or official of the state that would deny that right to be extended. So now that we are at this juncture where we are facing the first major election after the fall of dictatorship in 2021, precisely on the 4th of December this year, we are electing a new president, or there is going to be presidential election. And we thought perhaps this is the best time to show that the diaspora is part and parcel of the larger Gambian family who will determine the form and shape of our government without being denied the right as they did for 2 decades. From where we are, and from what we've heard, and taking account of the quotation that Sose Sise kindly read out to us. I was following yesterday the press conference that the IEC held, and various members of the media fraternity put questions to the officials as to whether or not the diaspora would be registered in readiness to vote for December. For me, the answer that I heard, and which Sose kindly read out to us, Sister Sose, gives me chills and indicates to me that perhaps this could not happen or will not happen. Well, I am saying, if it does not happen, if the diaspora registration and voting does not happen, it would not be on account of the diaspora's failure to take its full responsibility to ensure that everything possible has been done or was done to ensure that the diaspora votes. In the current, under where we are right now, in this particular instance, under these circumstances that we are looking at, and given what was said yesterday at the press conference, we are saying the fact that there is no constituency, or like the chairman of the IEC said himself, that one must live in a constituency in order for one to be allowed to vote. That's under Section 39 of the Constitution. Of course, it also says under other provisions of the Constitution that it is the responsibility of the IEC to ensure that regulations and rules are made that will ensure that the diaspora and every Gambian, for that matter, is allowed to vote. Now, I am beginning to wonder that it has been 5 years since the defeat of dictatorship. And at every stage that the diaspora and the MSDG in particular had engaged the people on the ground, the officials of government, we have had the repeated promise that this was going to happen. That by no means will the diaspora be marginalized any further, again, and that we are going to be registered and to vote for the presidential election. The law was clear. It was made into a policy at the very highest level, including the National Development Plan, which is the government's flagship program. So all these things were written in stone, if you like, in terms of the promises made. Now, for us to sit at this stage and hear that the key institution that is responsible for organizing and overseeing election, which is the Independent Electoral Commission, is making such a statement, which leaves us, believing or almost frustrated beyond words, is heartbreaking. But let me also, if you allow me, Ben, yes, to just dispel some of the myth and the misinformation that has been making the rounds about what level of preparedness has been, are we at right at this point. The IEC is the lead organization for organizing elections, but also there is the Ministry of External Affairs, which also is responsible for diaspora affairs. But there is also the Ministry of Justice, which is the drafter of laws, but also the line ministry for the IEC. Now, all of these organizations you would have thought would come together in an urgent and with utmost haste to ensure that the entitlement of the diaspora to vote was guaranteed and made sure before the next election. As it appears, in spite of our very many engagements with all of these institutions, it would appear that not everything has been done and that we are at a point where right now it is touch and go whether we will or we will not vote. But I just want to bring to your attention that if we are not going to vote, it wouldn't be on the basis that the diaspora had not taken its own responsibility to ensure that we prepare ourselves and make life easy for all the other agencies and institutions of state. We have contributed in the Elections Act in terms of, making recommendations, but also identifying specific, challenges that we need to overcome to ensure the diaspora votes. We have engaged the Foreign Affairs Standing Committee of the National Assembly, to ensure that those provisions in the Constitution that are not entrenched, but that will allow us to vote in the National Assembly election, which is in 2022, and we ensure that these are removed in the form of amendments, ordinary amendments. We have engaged the Ministry of Justice, in meetings and so forth and so on. We have engaged the IEC in, technical workshops, not one, not twice, perhaps 3 or 4 times, but also been in touch with them constantly over the period. So the diaspora has done its part. But most importantly, what we have done, which was perhaps one of the most critical areas, where, we had to really work hard on, was to determine the number of Gambians living abroad who may be entitled to vote. When I say we, I mean the MSDG project, which has been doing work behind the scenes, but also engaging with all of the stakeholders in a productive and encouraging way to make sure that, some of the barriers to the diaspora voting and being registered is also removed. And to do that, we have had to do a lot of research and analysis of the Gambian population abroad using existing objective evidence, but also to commission individuals with expertise in this area to crunch the numbers and to do the research and the analysis of where Gambians resides, and if we were going really to register Gambians, how this would be done. In other words, the modalities and technicalities of registering Gambians, but also of preparing the ground for election. So in doing that, one of the key areas I just want to make this key point, that my presentation today is going to be broken down in 2. I want to isolate the presidential elections because that is imminent. It is about 6-7 months away. And I want to talk about that just briefly to the Mr. Moderator.
Yes,
so that we can distinguish it from the National Assembly election, which is not until 2022, and for which we now have, done a lot of work. We have looked at the number of Gambians in the diaspora, and we've used, like I said, objective evidence, which is the UN DESA figures. We have also looked at, we commissioned Gambians with expertise in this area, most notably C. Omar Kebe, who has done extensive work, in profiling the Gambian population in the diaspora. He has done sterling work in terms of determining how many Gambians live in every country that has been surveyed, but also, where are the primary residents for Gambians in terms of the numbers that live there. And we have come to the conclusion, even though there has been a bit of argument about this number, I think in the main, it is agreed that the number of Gambians living in the diaspora is anything, between 157,000 to 200,000. Now, I must say that this number of 170,000 is not based on the multi-generational numbers of people who live in the diaspora, because every Gambian who lives here may have 2 or 3 more children, and those are not taken into account. This is only the migrants, first generation migrants who are mainly factored in this survey. But if you look at the total number of Gambians living in the diaspora, it can be anything. It is more likely 200,000.
Okay. James, if I just stop you there, if I just stop you there and bring in the other panelists, and we just leave our listeners with that figure, let them ponder on that figure. 200,000 Gambians living in the diaspora who could be disenfranchised. We'll leave the listeners with that figure to ponder on for a minute and bring in the other panelists. Suleiman, over to you if you can bring in the other panelists. And James will revert back to you to discuss the substance of that number and the importance of that number as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sister Sose. I think we have Honorable Dauda Sana Jawara, Member of Parliament. Mr. Jawara.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Suare. I'm here. I'm in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jawara, for joining us. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
I guess you might have the statement made by the IEC chairman yesterday on the technically saying that the diaspora is not likely to vote unless there is an enabling environment where the constitution is amended, so that the constituency of the diaspora, 5 constituencies of the diaspora, is taken into consideration. Again, the IC chair did allude or state that there are so many work have been done or consideration have been done into this. And I know you are aware of all the statements been made by the stakeholders committed that this thing should happen. And the work carried out by the MSDG, which Brother James have just stated here, is not foreign to you as well. I mean, with our fundamental rights, of over 200,000 Gambians to be protected, which is underpinned even by a Supreme Court judgment. What is your position as a Member of Parliament, and what do you think should be done in Parliament to make sure Gambians in the diaspora are given their rights to vote these presidential elections? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suare, for having me, and also hello to everyone in these panels or the panelists. First of all, what I would like to say is that it is rather unfortunate that almost 6 months now to the general elections, we are still talking about whether the diaspora should vote or not. I read an article, I think it was an open letter to the president, reaffirming his promises that were made in the last elections. That one of the reasons why the former incumbent should be removed is because we want to bring in a new era of democracy, where every Gambian should be able to participate in such activities. So 4 years down the line and going to the 5th year, the end of the 5th year now, we're still where we are. It's unfortunate, and as a stakeholder, I don't want to be pointing fingers. All I can say is that there is still light at the end of the tunnel. We have to do what we can on top of what is already been done by this MSDG that you mentioned. I've been a keen follower of some of your work, particularly through Jegan Great Junction, and I've seen your efforts engaging stakeholders across the board, in all arms of government, to see to it that this is something that is done. And all that while, while we are part of a coalition government, I was very much optimistic that this will be done, one way or the other. Again, amid not the political climate that we live under. Because time and time again, the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission have come on to reassure Gambians that the diaspora is going to vote. So therefore, his word is enough for me to believe that whatever the bottlenecks are will be resolved, to see to it that that's the case. However, we are where we are now, and the IEC, like you said, in their press press conference yesterday, they made a very worrying statement to say that it's not looking likely that diaspora is going to vote, because I want to believe that it's because of the lack of political will. There is no constraints that we cannot resolve within this time, if the political will is there to address these things. For me, that is more or less, in fact, some form of a U-turn on their own promises. However, my little understanding from where I stand, because I'm not part of the two committees that are now involved in the interactions with the IEC on this new elections bill. But my understanding is that the IEC is still insisting that there should be a constitutional amendment to ensure that the diaspora votes. However, there is another school of thought which believe where Mr. Gayso belongs, that there is no need for any constitutional amendment to make sure that the diaspora votes. As we can all read quite clearly, the Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution, Section 39 3 is saying that all you have to be is an ordinary citizen of the constituency. So every Gambian, wherever you live in the country, in the world, you have an ordinary resident to your constituency in the Gambia, whether you are from Combo, Fuladu, or wherever. So therefore, you can register anywhere you are. How that doesn't have to affect the number of constituencies outlined in the constitution to say that there are 53 constituencies in the Gambia as amended. It says 48 in it, but the amended version is 53 constituencies. So the point I'm trying to say here is that as far as we are now, where we stand now, I think I have to advise or throw the ball back to the diasporans to do what they did before by actually invoking the Supreme Court to interpret this law for us, because they are the only platform where any dispute between the two parties of the same two different parties can actually amicably resolve their any ambiguity. Without them, the IEC might have a different view, when other constitutional lawyers might have a different view. But the Supreme Court's ruling will actually resolve the matter, to see to it that whatever their determination or their ruling prevails. And I think the time is there. The Supreme Court can expedite this process, and before the end of all the time frame that the IEC have identified to register the diaspora, which is July 1st, I think July 1st to July 31st. So which means we still have a month or so to be able to do that. But I, as a National Assembly member, cannot do that, and I don't see any committee of the National Assembly not being able to do that. It is upon diasporans, like you did before, to go back to the Supreme Court and seek interpretation on this, and therefore that rule will stand. So I think that answers to both your questions of the position of the National Assembly, but also what should the National Assembly do. I think basically that is my take for now, and I'll leave.
Would you consider yourself or members of Parliament taking the inter-party route in order to bring to make the case for the urgency of matters? And to make sure this thing is addressed. To force the political will. Make sure we have this as important as it is. If we cannot expect to see the North Bank of the Gambia not enfranchised, or the South Bank, we should not expect the diaspora to be left out.
Yes. First of all, we have to go back to the recent ruling of the National Assembly or the Supreme Court on the diaspora's right to vote and be and stand to be voted for. So therefore, I think that ruling alone can give us a basis of where the impression is coming from and where the direction we should lead. However, like I said, this is a disputed issue, and such disputed issues are constitutional matters. No one will be right until the Supreme Court says so. So even if, let's say, for example, the UDP, would actually on all the, let's say, even 90% of the registered parties in the Gambia decide that or believe that it should be one way, but one of the one other party believe it should be another, it cannot stand because there is no interpretation of this law, and only the Supreme Court can actually resolve that matter. So they will not be able to sway IEC's decision. But if the Supreme Court makes the rule, then therefore IEC have no choice but to succumb to that ruling.
Thank you very much.
As far as I'm concerned, I am in the same camp now with GSO. I'm in the same camp now with many other political parties, including my party. But others are have not a different view to the matter, and only IEC can resolve that. Sorry, only the Supreme Court can resolve that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dauda Jawara. For people just joining us, the discussion is the third edition of the Diaspora dialogue on the issue surrounding our right to vote. And we do have the Honorable Sana Jawara. We did have Mr. Musa Kamara, the Director of the Diaspora Directorate, Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we have our sister Sofna Sala from Duga and Mr. James Bahum from the MSDJ. I would move on to invite Mr. Musa Kamara, the Director of the Diaspora Directorate from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Kamara, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Suare, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara, for joining us on this important program. I might just put back the same question that we have been dealing with from the position we invited Mr. James Bahum to give us the background of the work done by MSDG on behalf of the diaspora in consulting the stakeholders, which you would be one of the stakeholders being consulted on the extensive which had been done, carried out to ensure all the questions have been answered or questions have been raised. And considering that you are the one responsible for the welfare of the diaspora or sitting at the desk that our issues are being addressed, what has been done by your office and considering this issue that the diaspora are not as it is now are not likely to vote unless we on to make sure it's done. What's your position, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Suare. As a parent ministry for Gambians in the diaspora, this issue has been a concern to us. And we believe it is the right of Gambians in the diaspora to be registered and to vote. And Gambians at home. And as such, being a parent ministry, we have a role to play. Basically, our role is to facilitate, especially in terms of the movement of the logistics and personnel of the IEC, to work with our embassies to ensure they are prepared in terms of information dissemination and so on and so forth. And the willingness and commitment is within the ministry to carry out that responsibility. However, with the challenges on the ground, we've been working closely with the Minister of Justice, especially when the Minister was presenting or was answering or was clarifying to the select committee responsible for local government and for election matters. we were there with him. We worked closely with the ministry to support and to ensure that the issue of diasporans is considered in the bill. Now, with the IEC, there has been challenges. We've been engaging them as well, but our position is not to relent, to still engage both the Ministry of Justice and the IEC, even if possible with the National Assembly Select Committee responsible for foreign affairs, to ensure Gambians in the diaspora are able to vote in the forthcoming elections.
Okay, thank you, sir. But the point here is we had 5 years that we knew that the Gambians in the diaspora have the right to vote, and not only that, we have a Supreme Court ruling that underpins that right for us to vote. And what practical measures, apart from the Select Committee, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, in contact with the Select Committee or the Minister of Justice, to deal with this issue? As we have heard from MSDJ, an extensive work has been done on this. Technically, all information that are needed have been provided, and we have time to do this, and the budget have been allocated. What were the practical measures taken? And now, what should be the practical position that your office is going to take, considering the information available that we don't, or we might not need a demarcation of a constituency, as we all belong to a constituency. We all came from a constituency, naturally from the Gambia. And to deal with this issue is the prioritization of the presidential elections. When we will have time, another year, to work on the parliamentary. But for now, is to make sure this important point is noted. What is the minister going to do?
Okay, what we've done so far is what I just elaborated by engaging relevant stakeholders. Like you said, we are very much grateful and appreciate the extensive work done by MSDG. They did a profound job. In fact, they did part of our job, and they've been supporting us technically. So anything that could have been an excuse for Gambians in the diaspora not to vote is not an issue in terms of the modalities, the procedures, and the technicalities required in terms of the Gambian population in various jurisdictions, the polling stations that should exist, and so on and so forth. However, coming back to the challenges, what we're now thinking is to have a stakeholder meeting, to have the Ministry of Justice, the IEC, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on one platform and discuss this issue in a bid to ensure Gambians in the diaspora are given the opportunity, which is their right, to be able to register and vote.
Thank you. Can you just give us specific, when are you guys planning to have this consultation or this meeting precisely? Because we are running out of time. And as I said, can you give us an undertaking that with the new information available, and as the Honorable MP is telling us, the aspirants, we should move again to try to get a resolution from the Supreme Court. But in this case of that, your office representing the diaspora, what are you going to do with that information that, look, the diaspora might need this demarcation to vote in the presidential elections? But what you guys going to do precisely what?
Based on the information available and also the work that has been done with MSDG, I think all these are advantages at our disposal to be able to pursue the interests of Gambians in the diaspora to vote. So we had a senior management meeting, and next week too we'll have a meeting in terms of working out the modalities of how do we engage all these stakeholders together to be able to find a solution for Gambians in the diaspora to be registered and to vote. So I may not be able to say precisely when, but next week, we'll be able to discuss and strategize when do we meet the stakeholders, how do we meet them, how do we engage them to ensure at our level whatever is required is fulfilled.
Thank you. We'll come back to you, sir. May I invite my sister Sohna Sala? Sohna?
Hello. Yes.
Sohna, as an activist, as a diaspora, and hearing the dialogue that we have and your understanding of what's been done about the diaspora vote from the work the MSDG have done, the time that we had, 5 years, and the resources in our disposal, and the international goodwill, and the diasporans for themselves looking forward for this in the new democracy that we found ourselves. What's your, can you just give your frustrations and what you think of all these surroundings? And if you have any recommendations that you want to address to both the Member of Parliament and the Mr. Kamara from the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much. This is a very important topic. And way back when Jammeh was still in power, this was probably one of the most discussed topics, the diaspora disenfranchisement. Mm-hmm. So to come back 5 years later, and we're still talking about whether the diaspora will vote or not. I've always been very, very suspicious. If you look back just after the constitutional review process, the IEC had issued a timetable of voter registration. Mm-hmm. And at that time, the diaspora was included, but the diaspora was included after the actual referendum was supposed to be held. Mm-hmm. So, for me, immediately that was a red flag. And this was after the Constitutional Review Commission actually came to the diaspora and consulted on the new constitution. But then a few months later, we were disenfranchised from even voting in the referendum. Mm-hmm. That was a red flag. The words of Ali Mombajan when Sosa was reading I was like, okay, when was this? Was this during the time of Jammeh? Because I wasn't aware that of his statements yesterday. So it's quite shocking. It's quite disconcerting. It's unfortunate that he's not taking heed to the ruling of the Supreme Court in January. And personally, I believe that, right now there is no legal hindrance to Gambians being able to vote the Gambians in the diaspora being able to vote in the next election. In the early days, Barrow has clearly stated the diaspora is the 8th region of Gambia, and suddenly now Gambia has 53 constituencies inside the country who are the only ones eligible to vote. There are 32 countries in sub-Saharan Africa who have their diaspora voting outside of the country. So I don't know what makes Gambia so unique that we cannot figure out the modalities to be able to include the diaspora. Right now, with 6 months out to the elections, I think the time is very, very short to be even wrangling. We can continue the wrangling, but I think as a matter of urgency that this issue, including the words of Ali Mamariyai, need to be presented to the Supreme Court once again. So that, right now it has to be a multi-pronged approach. We cannot just rely on National Assembly, Interparty, and the IEC to do the work. We need to tap into all those different avenues, spread ourselves thin if we have to, and especially use the courts to make sure that we are enfranchised. The fact that the timetable is out, registration has started, and there is still no talk of diaspora, I think that just speaks to the lack of will that is there to prevent us from voting. That's pretty much all I have to say, because listening to the other speakers, they've pretty much covered all of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sala. We'll get back to you soon. Brother James.
Yes, Ben.
Okay, Brother James, can we come back again to the preparedness of the for us to vote? Now we narrow it down to that everything has been done, literally, technically, that needed to be done. But still, we're here, and there's still opportunity for us to have this done. Can you enlighten some of the other viewers on the point of the petition written to the president. And from there on, where MSDG is and how are they going to map forward, I mean, to ensure, especially on this position, that we don't need any additional legislation to vote, to register to vote in this presidential elections. And if apart from MSDG as a diaspora, what other message would you have for diasporans to do in order to see this possible?
Thank you very much once again, Ben. And the other speakers pretty much echo everything that I wanted to say, but I'll just make sure that that distinction that I drew between the presidential election as opposed to the parliamentary election, which is not until 2022. As far as the presidential election is concerned, there are no hindrances. There are no barriers to our participation in it. And even though the chairman of the IEC yesterday said about one having to live in a constituency as the reason why we cannot, that does not hold water at all.
We lose Brother James. Okay.
Yes, Suleiman, I think James has dropped.
Okay.
Yes. But if we can, Suleiman, bring in the director of the Diaspora Directorate, Mr. Kamara, to just elaborate. Is James coming back? To just elaborate on the work that they have done with the IEC. Because as per Aliou Momar Njai's words in his statement, he said, they have tried everything possible. Can Mr. Kamara elaborate on the work that they did with Aliou Momar Njai? Can he confirm what everything possible means in terms of their interaction with Aliou Momar Njai and the IEC? Because we need to be sure that everything possible has been done. And as the ministry responsible for diaspora affairs as well, we also need to be sure that concrete steps were taken. If he can just elaborate on the extensive work, as per his words, that were done with the IEC. If he can elaborate. Mr. Kamara, thank you.
Mr. Kamara, you mute. Mr. Kamara, did we still have you on? Okay.
Yes, I was trying to unmute.
Hello, Ben.
Okay, I'm finding it difficult to get the video on, but I can proceed without the video.
Yeah, you can proceed without the video. It's a problem in Gambia to use the video.
Thank you once again. Coming back to Ms. Roberts' point, all we could do as a ministry is to engage the IEC in terms of the need for Gambians in the diaspora to vote and our availability and readiness to facilitate whatever they may need to ensure that is fulfilled. I know there has been challenges, and the issues should have been handled earlier than now, and it is in fact something that we should not be talking about now. However, all we did is to engage them as the implementing agency. Our role is only to facilitate, but to engage them as the implementing agency to confirm the need and also our readiness. But with whatever is happening now, like I said, we are thinking a more proactive approach would be having all the stakeholders on one table. By this, we think we'll be able to profile a better solution by talking to each other, having the facts on the ground, and even before us, the MSDG has been engaging the IEC directly, which partly is on behalf of Gambians in the diaspora, but partly on behalf of us as a ministry responsible for the Gambians in the diaspora, because they've been giving us that technical support. So the engagement of MSDG alone is sufficient, and that the IEC has been extensively engaged, has been guided, has been shown all the possibilities of Gambians in the diaspora being able to register and being able to vote.
Sir, that's quite right that MSDG have done that, and part of what they were doing, consulting the enabling the mandated institution, the IEC, on your behalf. But your office is mandated to represent our interests. MSDG have taken up the responsibility to do so much. But here, I think your office is in a better position, I mean, to enable, to make sure the political will is used and have things done. MSDG cannot make that part happen. What they can do is to support your office with the technical, resources, and in fact, I think if they're empowered more, they could have delivered more. But it seems there's nothing tangible that we can say that your office or the Ministry of Finance, Foreign Affairs have done in order to ensure that they have delivered the mandate given to them. I mean, for the period of almost 5 years now.
Not necessarily. I would agree that we could have done better, and the engagements would have started long ago, not now. However, there's evidence of correspondence between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the IEC. And again, they are an independent institution. So all we can do is to pursue the interests of Gambians in the diaspora by engaging them to ensure they've catered for them to be able to register and vote, and also to assure them about our availability and readiness to work with them in transporting or in facilitating the movement of the logistics and the personnel, and to ensure our embassies are ready, the requisite data is available, and so on and so forth. And all that has been done.
Thank you, sir. Just once more here to put the same question again that my colleague have done. Can you tell us if the IEC, which you said were mandated to do this, have approached you to facilitate a demarcation or discuss a demarcation issue during the course of this 4 years? I mean, what have they asked for to be facilitated, I mean, from your office?
Yes, I was redeployed to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs early January this year. However, I know the IEC wrote to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs last year regarding the issue of diasporans registration and voting. I can confirm that they've written to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs last year.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Brother James, I hope you are back again.
Yes, brother.
Yeah,
I am back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can continue from there on. And the other task, I mean, from the information taken from Mr. Kamara, from the Foreign Affairs Ministry, is the enabling environment given to MSDG. I mean, to do certain things on behalf of the ministry. If you can enlighten Gambians more onto that place. I mean, as you answer the question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you also to the director of the Diaspora Directorate for his very positive posture on the question of diaspora voting, and for planning on this stakeholder meeting, which I think would be a step in the right direction. It is true, I just want to make this point before I carry on, is that even though we are at what some people call the 11th hour, I don't think, the cause is lost. There is ample time to really ensure that the diaspora is registered and prepared to vote in the presidential election of 4th December. And I don't think we should be, we should see it as doomsday, as it were, and that with little or nothing that we can do to change the trajectory of how things are being done. We need to be in haste, of course, but it can still be done. There is sufficient time to allow the diaspora to be registered and to vote. That will lead me, of course, straight to how that will be done, the registration and voting of the diaspora. I mentioned before I close the last segment of my presentation that there are 200,000 Gambians living in the diaspora, give or take. And the spread of the Gambian population across the continents is that the United States of America is top. And followed by the United Kingdom, 37,000 for the United States, 36,000, Italy 23, Spain 23, about the same, Germany 15, Senegal 6,500 for Sweden, France 2,500, Guinea-Bissau 1,006, Netherlands 1,005, Norway 1,003, and so forth and so on. Switzerland, 1,000. So these are the figures that we have regarding the spread of Gambians across the many countries that Gambians are resident. And we've given the figures with the top 5. This is the United States at 37,000, 15,000, going towards the first 5 that would be, registered to vote because of the higher numbers of Gambians living in these areas. That would be anything from 15,000 upwards. That these would be the first 5 that would be given priority because of the numbers. And of course, we can add 2 more in Senegal and Sweden because they have over 5,000 residents. And the argument is that Sweden, Senegal in particular, that figure of 6,000 may be an underestimate. But also other countries with more than 1,000 Gambian resident there is France, Guinea-Bissau. So anything between 1,003 and 2,500. And of course, Switzerland, Finland, Belgium, Austria, anything over 500 residents in these areas. So we're saying, and this relates to, because I have said about the presidential election that no barriers in the path of the diaspora to vote or to register and vote. But this gives us an idea where the Gambians live. And when it comes to voting, what should be given, where should be given priority. And it could be anything between the first 5, first 15, which is that anything between, between 1,000 and 37,000 residents, taking United States and Switzerland and Finland into account. That we can also, looking at these figures, decide to register people in countries where the Gambia has an embassy or a mission, because it would be perhaps a little more easier because of the presence of Gambian officials on the ground in those countries. But the basis on which these registration and potential voting would be carried out would be based on the numbers of Gambians resident in those countries. So that these figures have long been available to the IEC and to other stakeholders with which with whom we have engaged over the years. We have also, in fact, looked at how the voting would be conducted. In fact, before I go to how the voting would be conducted, I just want to talk about the qualification for registration, and how what requirements Gambian citizens in the diaspora would have to present to qualify for registration. I think, and one of the key controversy that has arisen is whether Gambians who hold Gambian passports that are expired can still use those documents, to register. Yesterday, I had at the press conference of the IEC held that an expired passport would not qualify as a valid passport for the purposes of registration. And I think that needs to be reconsidered because most people who live in in Europe and in the diaspora have passports that have expired, but have not had the opportunity or chance to really renew them, even where they still, opt for dual nationality. You can still have the passport of the country in which you reside, but also you maintain your Gambian citizenship, and that needs to be figured out. That if you hold a passport that expires, you can still use it because it is an indication that you qualify for Gambian passports, even whereas the passport and the life of the passport itself is expired. So this is a critical point that needs to be clarified by the IEC in terms of the requirement for or the evidence needed to qualify for registration as a Gambian for election purposes. But also, we have also talked about the modalities of voting. How will the voting be done there? Of course, there is this thing about whether Gambia, and I've had this said many times, whether Gambians in the diaspora should use electronic voting, which would simplify matters and make it easier for Gambians to register from a distance, virtually, pretty much. That has not been favored, particularly in terms of its inclusion in the elections bill that is before the National Assembly right now, the Elections Bill 2020. But the MSDG did make a proposal to have that included as a means by which the diaspora can vote, can be registered. Even taking it as far as the voting, we had suggested and proposed that the diaspora might be a good pilot project for the paper ballot, to vote by paper ballot, as a trial. There will be a dual, system where those on the ground will use the marble, but then we will pilot the diaspora, the ballot, the paper ballot in the diaspora. That as well has not gone down. Has not been included. But the proposals that we made were, were in the main, received, a positive consideration in the draft bill. Now, we also talked about the modalities of voting itself, that we don't really need to follow the system on the ground with heavy ballot boxes being carried from one place to another. If we have a number of with the number of political parties registered now, assuming that we currently have 20, by the time the election draws close, it might be about 20. We have 18 right now. So it will require a good deal of logistical maneuvering, really, to ensure that all the resources, and the implements needed for voting would have to be transported, across countries, and that logistical nightmare itself, was something that we considered, and so as a result, we decided to make recommendations for a somewhat different, way of voting. that will not use these heavy metals, but also, will use plastic drums, perhaps, that would be, they will do the same work in terms of being a receptacle for voting cards or voting marbles, but will not be so cumbersome as to create a nightmare for those who will be traveling around with it and the different.
Thank you,
so
Brother
I just
James.
wanted to, another tidbit on some of the detailed work that the MSDG has been doing to make it easy for the IEC and the other stakeholders to use this information that has, that required a lot of research and analysis and work, make it easy for them, like Mr. Kamara said, that most of the work had already been done, and it is only the political will, really, that is lacking. Sister Sohna Salah mentioned the Supreme Court judgment that underpins or guarantees the right of the diaspora to vote. And whereas that is clear, there is also constitutional provisions that supports that. But then it now befalls the IEC and the other stakeholders to really look at whether compliance with that ruling, should be placed at the top of the agenda.
Brother James, if we hold it there, we come back to that. Your next segment, we'll come back to that position. I just want to move back to Honorable Dauda Sana Jawara. I just learned that his real name is Dauda, actually, this afternoon. Honorable.
Yes, hello. Okay. Hello, Mr. Jawara, yes.
Without wanting to sound controversial or being conspiracy here, we all agree on the lack of political will, because the evidence are provided out there. We got 5 years, and the Constitution was even clear. But disregarding that, the diaspora have taken onto them represented by some members and had the Supreme Court ruling. And considering the Guinea-Bissau came out from a civil war, Guinea-Bissau have never been a stable country. Continuous civil war and dictatorship and conflict, and open conflict and everything else. Manage within a short period of time to deliver, these rights to their diasporas. Considering again not only about our rights, but the importance of making sure diasporans continue to be connected. Not only us, but the continuity of the diasporan. This is the generation of diasporans in their been born in the diaspora here, which will continue to contribute in the development of the country. Gambia cannot and will not be without the continuity of the connecting the diaspora to the country. Can you tell us your position now, or not to put you on the distinct as your party position, but just the outreach. We just want to hear the outreach and see the position that needed to be taken now. Not looking for any other way, but to make sure it happens.
Yes, thank you very much. When I was invited to this platform, I was wondering on what capacity. Then I saw National Assembly member on your flyer. So that means that I think my participation here now should be apolitical, even though I am an elected member on a party ticket. So therefore, my interventions now would be more or less on try to balance that that two variances. To make sure that I don't sound very political. But it is the previous speakers have all mentioned about the issue or their concern on the political will of this government to ensure that the diaspora, as the 8th region of the Gambia, is plays a part and parcel of this decision making, which is a very important decision making. I don't want to sound condescending, it's particularly to Mr. Kamara, who represents the executive. But we all are aware a few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, when IEC raised a very valid concern on their view of how this government or this administration is trying to undermine this election. It's not my words; it's the words of Mr. Njai of the IEC, who categorically went out there with an outburst to say that he doesn't think the Barrow government he wants to play fair on these elections. That is a very big indictment as far as I'm concerned. But we have to be realistic and look at the other variables. We've seen the draft constitution, which is a very progressive document, even though people will have different views to it, being killed in the parliament. We have seen a complete paradigm shift, from the trajectory to make Gambia one of the beacons of light for African countries, where even the likes of the country you mentioned, Guinea-Bissau, will even envy. However, time and time again, we have seen ourselves fail to commit to some of the promises, some of the commitments, the agreements that we have both agreed within ourselves and also with our development partners. So for me, like I said earlier, how I view this thing is that a good 10% of Gambians live outside the country. Now, that is not a small number. Yeah, that is not a small number. We're talking about up to 200,000 Gambians living outside the country. Those people deserve to vote in the next in this presidential election, because it's not only because of their contribution to our GDP and other revenues into our economy, but also their decision making is vital on how this country survives into the future. So for me, 10% of votes sometimes. There are parties, in the Gambia here who will not even secure that kind of vote. So it means, a good niche of Gambians, outside, who are not disenfranchised. So as far as I'm concerned, and from where I stand, both as a parliamentarian, but also a member of the United Democratic Party, I think it's just unfortunate. I will not want to make an outburst to start, throwing blames, to people who are not here to defend themselves. But I can say, I can give, quite a number of reasons and facts that can substantiate this claim, that the only problem that we are faced with right now is not the IEC, it's the executive. Because I heard what Mr. Kamara said about the role they can play, and yes, I agree. They are a facilitator in this whole process. But the government that he represents, maybe is beyond their mandate as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But the government he represents lacks the political will to make sure that IEC get all the support that they need to ensure that Gambians in the diaspora not vote this coming election. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but that's my take on it for now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jawara. And Mr. Jawara, whilst you're on it, just a statement. When you go back to Parliament, can you also convey to your members, your fellow parliamentarians, that when they rejected the draft constitution, they rejected our aspirations and hopes, and they continue to disenfranchise us? That is the result. That is the blatant truth that we're facing now. Thank you. Can you please...
Without a shadow of a doubt, they know that. Very much. It's blatant, deliberate conspiracy, to deny you your chance to vote, because Like I said, the draft constitution is the most progressive constitution that we have ever had since independence, I would say. So definitely anybody who played a part in denying the Gambians both in and outside the country, that opportunity to have something that's going to actually cement our foundations of a new democracy, or consolidate our democracy, is something that I don't even have to remind them. Everybody who played a part in that know exactly what they were doing, and they know what they've done, and I just want to leave it at that.
Yes,
it's just unfortunate.
On behalf of the diaspora, just tell them they killed our aspirations and our dreams, and they continued the disenfranchisement. Thank you. Mr. Kamara, just a question for you. Mr. Kamara, going forward, we would be expecting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to play an integral role in facilitating or coordinating the actions of the IEC on behalf of the diaspora, both the IEC, the Ministry of Justice, and the legislature. Are you willing to tell us now that from next week, everything that needs to be done will be done, including should there need to be a change in the law, like the IEC is saying, would your ministry be able to work with the Ministry of Justice to ensure that a certificate of urgency with the required legislation is taken to Parliament to ensure we vote in December 2021? Over to you, Mr. Kamara.
Yes, certainly, Madam Sose. Like I said before, we could have done better, to be honest. We could have done better. And we are a key institution. The diaspora, Gambians in the diaspora should be able to have confidence and trust in us in representing their interest, in pursuing their interests, especially matters that have to do with their legal or constitutional rights. So like I said before, as a ministry, we'll strategize and engage all the relevant stakeholders again in a bid to ensure the anticipation of the Gambians in the diaspora to be registered and to vote becomes exhausted. No matter how short the time, if the commitment is there and the willingness and the support we are having, I'm sure we should be able.
We can't hear Mr. Kamara anymore.
I think someone, okay.
Okay, yes. What I was saying is we could have done better as a ministry of foreign affairs, being the parent ministry for Gambians in the diaspora. So going forward, the commitment is there, of course, to ensure we appropriately represent and pursue the interests of Gambians in the diaspora, especially the registration and voting, which is your constitutional right. So we'll strategize better, engage all the relevant stakeholders in a bid to ensure that anticipation becomes a success. Despite the challenges in time, if there's willingness and commitment, I'm sure we should be able to achieve it together.
Thank you, Mr. Kamara. If you just, there's a noise coming behind in the background. And
Suleiman, I have one additional question for Mr. Kamara. Mr. Kamara, would your ministry also be in a position, or is your ministry willing and ready to issue note verbals to missions to countries that we would expect the Gambians to vote in? Once we overcome the IEC hurdles, we wouldn't want to be held under some diplomatic hurdles as well.
Yes, that should be a challenge because MSDG has done 80% of what is required in that endeavor. So that shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just move to my sister Sohna Sala again? Sohna.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Were you asking a question, or should I just?
No, go on. Then I'll ask the question. Go on. Then I'll.
Okay. For me, it's call me conspiracy, or I'm just basically just suspicious of this whole situation. But I mean, traditionally, it's, especially after the transition, our leaders had offered lip service on their view of diaspora inclusion and enfranchisement as a signal to international communities primarily. However, a lot of them tend to expand or restrict diaspora voting access, just depending on the leader's perception of their support abroad. And for me, I'm sorry, and just like Yahya Jammeh had disenfranchised the diaspora during his tenure, I suspect that the motivation in this case is basically the perception of the current leaders with their, basically their support abroad. And unfortunately, I don't think, I mean, when you want something, a durable institution, something like the IEC, you want something that lasts generations, despite who's in power. So I think that we need to just illuminate how the changing dynamics between those in the diaspora and those on the ground is really affecting diasporans who are basically disenfranchised and not allowed to vote. So that's pretty much just my, because somebody had mentioned basically the lack of political will. And I mean, this is what it all boils down to.
Thank you, Sandra. I want to get you another personal reaction to this. As a diaspora and an activist that have fought all this time. And considering, I keep saying Gambian diaspora is the most sophisticated diaspora in Africa. And considering the constraints we've been dealing with, during the dictatorship. And if this government or the government of Gambia have taken up the priority to engage the Gambian diaspora would not only the most sophisticated in Africa, but in the world, just as we look at the Israelis and Indian and other diasporas. And this is how there's no partner, more beneficial in Gambian development more than the Gambian diaspora in all sense. And it's an outrage. But the importance of this right is the extensions of the generations, of the identity of our people and our country, the sustainability of our country as sovereignty. Because when we discuss or take part in politics, in our households, let's keep it alive in our sons and daughters that will continue to take over from us to continue and engaging in their motherland. Considering again, as you said, there's evidence that there's no political will in the process, and because we have comparisons to countries, and we have seen the amount of work, and thank you very much, Mr. Kamara, for recognizing what MSDG have done, and now we are here. What would be your message to the Gambian diasporas? Onto this, at this moment now, going forward.
This is not the time for political apathy. Is that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just saying, this is not the time for political apathy. If you look about the phenomenon that's going on in Africa right now, if you look at Ghana, even Gambia and Senegal and all other places where you have hordes and hordes of African Americans having a homecoming, coming back to the motherland. And these are people who probably the only way they can determine where they came from is Africa. Came from in Africa is through some sort of genetic testing. But here you have people who are just one generation removed from Gambia, whose parents are Gambian, whose grandparents are Gambian, who themselves even consider them Gambian, but were born maybe in another country or spent a bulk of their time in another country, but then suddenly are disenfranchised from your roots just because of lack of political will or political expediency. I think it's wrong. And I think this is the fight that every Gambian, whether you are interested in politics or not, should take up, because we need to have a say in what goes on in our country. Elections is not just about selecting a leader, but it's about growing a country and building a country. It's about our healthcare. It's about our social services. It's about our education. It involves so much more, and our standing in the world. So this is not something, I mean, this I think should be like the red line. This should be the red line for every Gambian diaspora to be included in what is happening in our country.
Thank you very much. For the people just joining this discussion, this is the Diaspora Consultation Team bringing the dialogue on diaspora voting for 2021. And the topic today, which is the third show we had, is the status of Gambian voting and preparedness. And we have James. James, just there's a question here, and I think you might want to add it onto your answers coming from Adus Salinjai. How did you come up with the number of Gambians living in the countries you have mentioned? But James, again, to continue from where you have left on thank you again for Mr. Kamara highlighting this. And I knew how much MSDG have done, but coming from Mr. Kamara is even underpin how much, if 80% of some of work on that side have been done already. That I say thank you very much for representing us and doing a great job. The side of technology, I mean, a two-tier system we call it, or a dual system, and inside of progress, looking at all the ways to do it. Gambia, Diaspora serving as a pilot to start the paper ballot system, or to even to go onto electronic systems or whatever system would enable it. Can you take us from there onto the need of the electoral bill, which is still going on, so that we can get Honorable Senator Jawar again onto that, and before we conclude in a few minutes. Thank you, James. If you want to keep it brief.
Thank you, Ben. I think it would be enough for me to say that, given that the bill is still going through the motions in the National Assembly, that certain inclusions can still be made. Some of the recommendations we made to the bill in the earlier phases of negotiation and consultation have been, I said earlier, been included and accommodated in the bill. But the issue around the modality of elections itself, the technicalities of the voting itself, in which include electronic voting, of course, has not been included. But we have done work on that, and it is on the table of the IEC and the other stakeholders about the modalities of voting. Because of the sudden change, whereas it was going to be throughout the country, the 53 constituencies on the ground in Gambia and the proposed 5 in the diaspora, that they were all going to use paper ballot. All of a sudden, we reverted again by the IEC to the old system for whatever reason. They've given their reasons. But I think that there is still time, whilst the elections bill is going through the National Assembly, to make alterations and changes and to make inclusions to the bill as it passes through the necessary motions in the National Assembly. I believe that, I, for one, remain optimistic about the possibility that the diaspora will vote. I cannot do otherwise. Too much work has been done. Too much energy has been invested. The necessary, foundation on which the diaspora can be registered and vote has been constructed by the MSDG. So it is really to build the edifice itself now. And that can be done in the time that we have left. And I believe that with the necessary willpower and the necessary effort, it can be and should be done. Now, about coming back to Salinjai's question of how we came about this 200,000 number, the UNDESA figures, we use both figures from the United Nations, from the AU, and from ECOWAS but we also commissioned and undertook research and analysis based on where Gambians live, and this has been done by experts, including, like I said, a Gambian statistician by the name of C. Omar Kebe, who has written on the profile of Gambian populations in the diaspora, but also the work that Professor Fall, Jibril Fall, has done, over the years regarding issues around migration as one of the UN experts at the overarching United Nations experts on migration and population. So it was not plucked out of the air. It was, grounded on thorough research, but also of analysis of Gambian populations across the country. For instance, I can give a quick example. That the number of Gambians that were supposedly living in the United Kingdom, according to the UK Census Bureau, was around about 20,000 or thereabout. But further research had revealed that it could be, and it is in fact, well over that, 36,000 it said. So figures like this, if we take the original UN figure and the AU and ECOWAS figures as the foundation, for the research and for the analysis of the actual numbers living in these countries, for instance, 23,000 in Italy and Spain alone. And we know that recent migratory trends indicate that there were going to be a lot more Gambians living in those because of this backway syndrome and migrants coming through. So those were not factored in original census or surveys, but we took those into account and factored them into the analysis that we did to come out with a number of 200,000. Of course, we also looked at the intergenerational settlement of Gambians, that most Gambians would have children. The first generation migrant would have 1 or 2 children. That was also factored into the equation. And we arrived at the number of 2,000 as the most realistic number of Gambians living in the diaspora. Most people, as you know, in the diaspora who don't have the right, immigration papers also don't appear in most of these surveys for fear of being discovered. And we thought to look at that factor as well and see whether those who are hiding from hiding from the law should also, regardless of what their status is, be included in these surveys. And that also was one of the other factors that we took into account in determining the final number that we arrived at, which is about 200,000, give or take.
Thank you, Brother James. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say to Mr. Kamara, that we look forward to that engagement that he promised. And I think it would bear fruit. But the sooner we are able to do this, the better, considering the time constraint that we currently deal with. And the fact that we were not even mentioned in the registration process, the schedule for registration. And perhaps this meeting would change that as quickly as possible, so we are clearer about the details of whatever schedules there may be for the diaspora. Funding and other issues have been dealt with by other speakers. And I think Mr. Jawara also echoed our sentiment about how we feel about these things. And we are hoping that when he gets back to the National Assembly, he will really echo our concerns and ensure that there is a good deal of discussion about this particular issue, so we can expedite the process as quickly as possible to ensure that we are able to vote in December of this year.
Thank you, Brother James. We have almost 20 minutes to go. We just proceed to the closing remarks. And okay, I would. Thank you. I would just ask Honorable Sana to come up and give his closing remarks and to say thank you very much for attending this meeting and for being wearing the 2 caps properly and being very independent in in representing the House of Parliament. Thank you very much, Mr. Jawara. Can you come on, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Suare. But before I do that, I would like to ask Mr. Kamara a few questions and also clarify the issue of the bill. The bill, as we are aware, has finished its consultation process, and now it is with the committee who are now developing their report to be tabled before the plenary by June sittings or session. So any input that should be added to what has already been discussed in these consultations should be forwarded to people like myself to look at and also be able to not only participate but implore on my colleagues to incorporate it in their in the final in the amendments of the bill before it's finalized. So I would like to this forum to compile what is missing or actually engage Mr. Kamara and find out what was discussed and what is not discussed as far as the voting process is concerned, so that I can know what is missing and try to add that into the amendment stage or the consideration stage of the bill. The other question, the other thing is I want to ask Mr. Kamara. I'm not undermining his authority, but I understand that he is not the minister here, and therefore his authority can be less of a force to see to it that what the executives should do. I understand he represents the ministry. However, he's not the appointed cabinet member to make sure that these things are not put into cabinet and therefore get the executive to do something about it at ASAP. Again, I want to know Mr. Kamara to tell us I have no doubt with his intentions and his will to see to it that his desk as the directorate for diaspora and governments in the diaspora have their rights to participate in this election. However, I want him to give us concrete steps that he intends to take. What is he going to do tomorrow? What is he going to do next week? What is he going to do? So timelines of what he thinks. When are we going to have this stakeholders forum so that we can agree with the IAC and all other relevant authorities that these are the things that we should do before time that we don't have is wasted. So on that note, I would also ask him, who does he think needs to get this thing before the Supreme Court to interpret? At least that way we would know where we stand, whether the IEC, because as late as yesterday, the IEC is saying that the diaspora can't vote unless the law is changed. Okay, so if that is the position of the IEC, then it means we have a stumbling block that we have to actually cross. That means then the law has to change or it has to be interpreted. So before he leaves, I want him to inform this forum what are the step-by-step procedure that he wants, he intends to follow, so that we can all have an idea of how we're going to resolve this matter. Otherwise, it's just going to be another chat, and another month down the line we'll be coming back here and talking the same thing. So on that note, I just want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to participate in this auspicious forum. I am honored and humbled to be trusted with the confidence to come and be part of this instead of my other colleagues. But thank you very much, Mr. Suare, and thank you everyone in this listening to us.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sana. Mr. Kamara, Mr. Kamara.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Suare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. I would have to say thank you again for coming on this forum and to make yourself available and answer these questions. If you would not mind to deal with the questions raised by Mr. Honorable Sana Jawara, then give your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suare, for giving me the floor once more. With regards to Honorable Jawara's questions, The first one regarding what I would do practically. Actually, I've been nominated by the ministry to attend this dialogue. Both myself and as the director of the Diaspora Directorate and the Permanent Secretary were invited. We are both to attend the meeting, but upon our senior management meeting, I was assigned to attend the meeting. So that means I'm speaking on behalf of the ministry and representing the minister also. However, like he said, regarding the administrative procedures or bureaucracy, I may not have the political decision to implement what I said, but for the fact that I'm convinced that is what is required to be said, and I will report back both to the Permanent Secretary and the Minister about what has been discussed here. And also, being Director of the Diaspora, the Ministry has given me that mandate, and the Ministry takes advice from me in terms of matters relating to Gambians in the Diaspora. So I would engage both the PS and the Minister in terms of what has been discussed and what is required to be done. Certainly, the Minister is committed, and I'm sure he'll be able to give the endorsement to coordinate and engage all the relevant stakeholders on this matter. About his last question, as a government entity or as an entity within the executive, it may be challenging for us to take this matter to the Supreme Court. But I would exhort the diasporans to continue the engagement they have been doing and use any means available to them to take the matter to the Supreme Court. As an executive or an institution within the executive, there will be those bottlenecks. It's like you cannot take yourself to court. However, like I said, I'm convinced and I agree that Gambians in the diaspora have the right, they're entitled to be registered and to vote in our national elections. On that note, I wish to take this opportunity to thank you very much for inviting me to this platform. I'm grateful, and I want to reassure Gambians in the diaspora that we could have done better, but I think this forum is very timely, and we'll recommit ourselves to our responsibility of pursuing the interests of Gambians in the diaspora. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Thank you again. Let me just add this contribution from Mr. Madi Jabate before we move on to Mensah Saladin James. The existing constitution and the elections allow the diaspora vote. They do not bind. The Supreme Court went further to state the diaspora can vote. Therefore, it takes the skip. Okay, therefore, what is necessary now? What is necessary now? Therefore, what is necessary now are either of the two things. To go to the Supreme Court right now to have an order for IEC and the government to act on its ruling to register and make the diaspora vote. Two, to have a member put a motion on the floor of the parliament to order the IEC and the government to enable the diaspora vote. James, if you just want to react to the points raised by Mali and to move on to your closing remarks, please.
Thank you again, Ben. We are in sync with what Madi has said there. That there, as far as the presidential elections of December 2021 is concerned, there are no hindrances. There are no barriers in our way to participate in that. It is left to the IEC to ensure that they do their part in ensuring, in making sure, and also putting in place the necessary system to allow for the diaspora to vote. So there is nothing that is a barrier to our right to vote in the presidential elections. About the 2022 National Assembly election, there is a little bit more work to be done. And that is we have already started that work, and we have gone a long way to achieving the final outcomes that would enable us to participate there, but also to have representation at the National Assembly level. So that there's no problem about that. Sana Jawara raised an important, a number of important questions to Mr. Gassama. But what Mr. Gassama is
Kamara. Kamara.
Is music to my ear. Sorry?
Mr. Kamara.
So, and I look forward to Mr. Kamara, sorry, and I look forward to that engagement, along with the other stakeholders, to be on the same page so that we can discuss and bring to a close this, issue about the modalities and how it's going to be done. It's also great, gratifying to hear from Mr. Kamara that they will recommit themselves to their mandate to ensure that the diaspora votes. So I'm happy about that. We are working with the Foreign Affairs Standing Committee of the National Assembly, and we made presentation to the Joint Committee only a fortnight ago. And Madi Jobate was there. So he's clear about our, where we stand on the matter, and that there are no legal problems. And that we can vote in the presidential election. It's only about the timing. How soon are we going to put in place the final touches to ensure that the diaspora votes? Now that we have heard from the Foreign Affairs and the Directorate responsible for diaspora affairs, it gives me a bit more confidence that this is going to take place. With the emphasis placed on, by Mr. Kamara, on how this meeting of stakeholders, then we are able really to clarify some of the points, but also to put on the table more proposals to ensure that whatever little teething problems that we may have or challenges that we may have to overcome are carried out and ensure that we remove all the barriers, but also re-enthuse ourselves with the issue of diaspora voting, which is a central condition, or pillar of policy and law in the Gambia. One final thing. I have no doubt about the support of the general public, in the Gambia to the diaspora issue and the rights that we must enjoy, as citizens of this great country. Both in the third sector, the civil society organizations, in the political parties, at the level of the government itself, we have had great support coming through, and these have been re-emphasized over and over again. We have the Supreme Court make a determination on the entitlement of Gambian diaspora to vote. Now, apart from the fact that the law is clear, they have, reconfirmed it, that we have to be registered and we have to vote. And if we fail to live up to the ruling or to comply with this ruling, it would be catastrophic, and we do not want that to happen. We want a government who abides by the rulings of the apex court of the country, and everything therefore must be done to ensure that they comply and enforce the ruling of the highest court of the land. And I think that would be in keeping with our democratic culture. It would be in keeping with, a country that is based and a government that is based on the rule of law and abides by the principles of the rule of law. But I also believe it is only fair that they do not discriminate against 10% of the Gambian population living just because they live outside of the country. It amounts to disenfranchising the whole of Badibu, perhaps, or Kerewan, or places like that. And to say that that part of the country will not vote would be a gross anomaly. And we need to avoid that kind of situation as it regards the diaspora. So I am happy to say to you all that I continue to hope for the best. And I continue to believe that the diaspora will vote in the time that we have left. If used properly, we are able to ensure that the diaspora has its full entitlement and its full measure as productive citizens of our beloved country. So thank you very much, Ben, and thank you very much to the panel, other panelists, and the organizers of this very useful forum as we march forward to ensuring that the diaspora takes its rightful place in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and I hope we'll be having members from the MSPG on the...
Suleiman, you're muffled. Can we get the closing remarks from Sohna? Sohna, please, can you give your closing remarks?
Thank you very much. I'm going to just ride on the optimism of Jagan. He seems very, very optimistic that the diaspora will get its vote. Considering the barriers and the impediments that are there for the diaspora vote, you asked the question, can they be removed? The answer is yes. However, is there political will to remove those barriers? And that's where the question lies right now. So I think us as citizens, the diaspora need to do everything we can to make sure we push, for that political will to be actually realized, and that the diaspora is allowed to vote. The groundwork has been done. MSDG has done a wonderful job, and other civil society, in producing all the documents and suggesting modalities and just ways around all the impediments that are supposedly there. So we just hope that this is not just a way for the, because at first we heard it was like, oh, we don't have the money for diaspora elections. And now it's like, okay, we need to change the laws. So we're just hoping that impediments will not continue to be placed, obstructing, the diaspora from reaching the goal, and just basically using this as a tactic to run the clock down. So we just need to be on our toes, put our ear to the ground, and just listen to all the rumbles. And in the meantime, go to the Supreme Court and have them interpret the laws that supposedly need to be changed for the diaspora to vote. So I thank everybody. Very important topic, and I'm looking forward to following up. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Sohna. Suleiman, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, sir.
You're a bit muffled, Suleiman. We can't hear you properly.
Okay, you can carry on then.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks ever so much. I take this opportunity to thank all of our panelists, Sohna Salah, James Bahum, Honorable Sana Jawara, Musa Kamara. Thanks ever so much. And to our brilliant host, Suleiman Suare. Thank you for a fantastic dialogue. As Sohna Salah had said, and I borrow her words, at a time where hordes of African Americans are returning back to Africa, we, the Gambian diaspora, some of whom are only a generation removed, stand to be excluded from participating in our elections. As for the chairman of the IEC, Alhaji Aliu Momar Njai, and I quote him, saying, among other things, unless the constitution is changed, we cannot allow them to vote, end quote. A position we greatly refute. The continued disenfranchisement of the Gambian diaspora remains. What the executive, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Justice, the legislature, and will do to reverse the unfortunate position remains to be seen. As was during the Jammeh era, it still is under this current administration, the continued disenfranchisement of the Gambian diaspora. This is our sad reality. I urge the representative of the executive, Mr. Kamara, the representative of the legislature, Mr. Sanat Jawara, to work together in the various arms of government that they represent to ensure that we do not just pay lip service to all the utterances that we've heard here today. As members of the diaspora, we will continue to fight. We will continue to push to ensure that the disenfranchisement ends. And in December 2021, we realize our right and exercise the right to vote as any Gambian. There are no two Gambians, there is one Gambian. I thank you all. See you next week for another dialogue where we will have other Gambians joining us here to discuss why the diaspora continues to be disenfranchised and what we can do to salvage this unfortunate situation. Thanks ever so much to all the media that are partnering with us. I say thank you. To all our listeners, thank you. To my colleagues, thanks for a brilliant job. Suleiman, thanks for hosting. I thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Recording